Hey guys, welcome back to this episode of The Edge of Analytics. I'm Caroline Wright, and I brought with me today Andy Lawrence, who's going to help talk to us a little bit about self-service dashboards and what's happening in the landscape of reporting. So if you're interested in that, stick around. And Andy, thanks for joining me today, first off.
Glad to be here.
So that we know that I brought the right person onto this episode of our vlog, I wanted to do a little pop quiz. I hope you're okay with that.
I'm ready.
Okay. What is the most hated or least effective chart type?
So Business Insider actually wrote an article about this called Pie Charts Are the Worst. And I happen to agree that the answer is pie charts because they're the worst.
So why is that? I feel like I was raised seeing all these pie charts. I've seen pie charts for all sorts of things, and now I come into the analytics field and I hear they're the absolute worst thing. They're a big no-no.
Yeah, well, so the real issue is that they're a bad visual and they're ubiquitous on a lot of reports. A lot of people think that they're relatively acceptable. So there's two major problems with a pie chart. The first is that all they're describing are proportionality without necessarily the actual value of a measure. And if all of the different proportions are relatively the same or very close to each other, it's really difficult for the human eye to rank them. Now, the other issue is that you introduce multiple pie charts with similar measures. You're starting to obfuscate the actual value between each pie chart. So it can lead to a lot of misleading information and poor decision making. So there's almost no instance where a pie chart is necessary in a report.
Okay, all right, that's a good answer, and I can see that actually now that I'm thinking about it. Well, then, what are some of the more popular chart types these days?
Well, for the alternative to a pie chart, it's very easy to just switch it to a bar chart. So then you can actually see a rank from the best to the worst and the actual size against the proportion. So the best visuals to choose really depends on the audience. If we're thinking about the executive staff, we just want to stick to the basics, just bar charts, lines, graphs, tables, things of that nature. If we're talking about lower level staff that just want to see something that's a little more fun, I like building sand keys because they can show the flow from one measure to another. And in Power BI especially, there's a lot of custom visuals where we can make, for instance, a stock ticker or even a fish tank visual that'll show fish based on certain metrics that swim around in a tank.
Okay.
And it sounds dumb, but to my chagrin, I built some very popular reports with that fish tank.
Some very popular fish tank reports.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I imagine for a pet store, but
Yeah.
yeah, cool. So clearly you are knowledgeable enough. I think they've proven it, and you obviously know what you're talking about. What got you into this industry? What got you to BI?
Well, I fell into I fell into business intelligence somewhat accidentally. I had more of a background in business operations analysis and financial analytics. Then after I got my MBA, I fell into it through a recruiter. And to be honest, when I first started, I couldn't even really articulate what business intelligence was. But now that I've gotten into it, I absolutely love data analytics and reporting. So I've been doing it for about 4 years now, and it's absolutely what I love.
What do you like about data visualization specifically, since I know that's an area of focus for you?
Well, one of my favorite parts is that I can wear a number of hats. From the back end, I have to do a lot of SQL coding and building data analysis expressions measures. More on the front end, I get to flex a creative muscle because I get to build a lot of charts and graphs, and then I get to collaborate a little bit with end users. And I'm a very social person, so I actually like talking to a lot of the executive staff of clients and some of the end users to find out what they need, what their pain points are, and what data they don't have visibility into. What I really love the most is that when I collaborate with other members of my team, for instance, right now for a retail company, I'm working with an EIM architect and an ETL expert that spun up an Azure DB. And to me, they did the real work. But the thing is, it's still just air until we have something tangible that customers can see. So part of my job is to breathe life into that and add color and shape to what they've done. So for me, that's really fun and really satisfying to take the work they've already done and create something that can actually be seen by the end client.
I like that analogy, especially when it's in the cloud. Turn air into something you can actually see. Though we know cloud is not actually in the cloud. But, so one thing that I think you didn't mention, but I would like to plug for you, but as a marketer, what I really respect for those working in the data visualization field, something that's kind of newer in a lot of opinions, especially mine, but the need for real design expertise and data visualization really is an art these days. We hear a lot about data storytelling, but I know when we do a lot of these self-service dashboards, some of the wow factor is when we actually hand over a dashboard, we see the difference in what we can create versus what an individual business user can create just from a capability standpoint, but really how you can pull the data together and make it tell a story on a dashboard. I think that's a real art that people like you have a rare talent. So that was awesome that a recruiter saw that very early on in your days.
Yeah, thank you.
But I'd love to get your thoughts. So we're seeing a lot of self-service analytics really is the bigger trend right now in the market. I mentioned it when we started the blog, whatever we're calling this today, that we're having business users really drive a lot of the analytics vernacular, a lot of the BI initiatives these days. How, if I'm a business user, can I really be using reporting, and what advice might you have for someone who's trying to set up a dashboard on their own?
So one thing I really like about Power BI is it's a very low barrier to entry in terms of technical skills, and people that at least have some background in Excel and know some basic syntax can very quickly build their own reporting with Power BI. So I bake in, through analysis services, the model that's already been built off the database or the data warehouse, and some pre-built measures that are to define the KPIs that they need, so they can plug right into it and start building charts and graphs on their own. And I think a lot of people prefer, whenever they're able to do their own analysis rather than have to go to somebody else and beg like Oliver Twist for some reports. So I think self-service is really the wave of the future, and one thing I really like just about Power BI is the simplicity to offer that to some of our clients.
So it has sort of a pretty, not very steep, barrier to entry. You can actually train on it pretty easy.
Yeah, there's not as much of a learning curve, and I've seen people without technical skills start to build reports, and some of them look almost as pretty as some of the ones that I've been doing, and I've been using it for years now. So that part's been really exciting.
Yeah, is that what drew you to Power BI? Sort of its more self-service friendliness?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about it, and also that it integrates well with most of the Microsoft stack. For the project I'm working on currently, we're very much a Microsoft shop because we're using an Azure DB, we're using integration services, analysis services, and we're plugging that into Power BI. So it's everything Microsoft, and I have a lot of faith in the product.
What's the difference between, you just mentioned analysis services, I know Microsoft has SSAS, SSIS, SSRS, and Power BI. Can you explain to us kind of the difference in their reporting suite?
Yeah, it's a little confusing at first because we can talk about SQL Server reporting services or integration services or analysis services, and they sound very similar, but they aren't. So integration services is the ETL tool that developers would use to move data, to handle events, or to create data flow tasks, to consolidate data into a warehouse or an Azure DB. The work they do is above my pay grade. So I govern analysis services because what I'm doing is I'm taking all that information and all the tables, and I'm housing all that that information in memory and analysis services tool. So I'm building together the tabular model, and then I'm creating a bunch of measures off KPIs that I've discussed with the end clients, and all that feeds directly into a Power BI report.
Cool. You just mentioned governance, and I wanted to touch on that real quickly. I know one of the things we hear, self-service, sounds fantastic. Give the data to the end users and let them do their own reporting. But how do you control self-service using Power BI from a governance standpoint?
So that's a great question. We really want to avoid information anarchy whenever we can, which can manifest very quickly if we're not careful. So the most important thing is to have one single source of the truth. The reason I like having a model housed in analysis services is that I can make one central model where I already know how all the tables connect, and then I can build a series of KPIs and measures where I've already had it vetted with some of our clients, which is more difficult than you think because we want to consider, well, how many customers shopped in a given week? Well, that sounds easy until we think about the different unique identifiers we have with every single customer, whether we want to involve any of the employees that made purchases, any that we've been tagging as fraudulent. So if we have multiple analysts building their own measures and then making their own ad hoc model within Power BI, it's going to introduce different results. And then the executives are going to see competing reports and have an issue with that. So I think that's really what's most important, is to have that one central model with one central list of KPIs and measures that everybody's feeding from, and then we don't have that problem.
That makes a lot of sense. And we actually talked on another episode with Aaron Hart about the new modern data infrastructure and how that really supports multiple different data sources and being able to house that single version of the truth and really rein in some of those old shadow BI departments that we know everyone had running rampant a while ago, but replace those with actually equipping them with self-service, but in a way that you're controlling the data. You don't have 8 different answers coming from 8 different departments on the same question.
Exactly. Actually, I work with Aaron Hart on the same team, so I'm very much aware of him.
Awesome. What are some uses that you've seen specifically for self-service?
Well, I think a lot of the executive staff just wanted to see like a very fast, I need to see revenue and profit month over month for this particular span of time for these listing of stores. with a certain stretch of products, and they just want that answer very quickly, and they don't want to always have to come to us for a new dashboard. So I think when those instances, self-service is the way to go.
Awesome. So kind of scaling the analytics enablement. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I'd love to end things, if you wouldn't mind. You mentioned earlier when we talked about your role that you wear a lot of different hats, and that's exciting for you. This is obviously a growing industry. So exciting to be in data visualization right now. It's only going to even get more relevant as we grow from a technology standpoint. What's some advice that you would give someone sitting in your position maybe 5 years ago when you weren't necessarily in technology yet, you hadn't heard from that recruiter? If they want to get into this field, what would you recommend them either studying or reaching out to? What is some advice you'd have?
Well, so I could fill a whole other extra interview with that question. So I'll stick to 5 very quick pieces of advice.
We're trying to stay under 15 minutes today.
Yeah. So when you're building a dashboard and you're presenting to an end client, there's 5 really important things to be considering. And I'll try to move quickly through a lot of these. They're very important. So the first is accuracy. And that's absolutely the most important, because if there is an inaccurate report, garbage in, garbage out, you're not only eroding trust with the client that's using it, but you might be responsible for some poor decision making downstream. Past that, it has to be aesthetically pleasing, and I've learned that the hard way, because I used to just build reports that were accurate, but they were a little bit dirty in terms of what colors I was using. And to give you a quick anecdote, I had a coworker of mine once clean up a report that I already built because he had some graphic design background, and the report that wasn't being used became the single most popular report in the entire company, and it was getting thousands of hits every single month according to the metadata. So it became by far the most popular report that ever existed, and it's only because he cleaned up the colors.
That design is really important.
Yeah, so I learned that, and the next 2 most important are to always make sure you're telling a story, and to make sure that there's a possibility for decision making off the report. So if I'm creating a report and I'm just showing for the last 2 years the sales cycle was the same seasonality, the same actual revenue, I'm showing information, but I'm not telling a story. So if you're going to be a good data visualization developer, you'd want to say, well, it seems like the revenue is the same, so the delta is the same. But if we dive into the individual stores, some had high revenue, some had lower. The higher revenue might have been collected into one geographical market, the lower into another one, which correlates to a certain marketing initiative. And now we're starting to tell a story that perhaps there's the positive net present value from the marketing investment they're making in this market and not that one. And then that's supposed to lead to decision making. So I think the heart of every decision, or heart of every single business is impactful, data-driven decisions, and that should be done off the reporting that we're building. And the final one is to know your audience, to know what their technical skills are, what they care about, what they need to see, and especially the farther you move up the line of the executive staff, how long they'll actually spend even looking at the report.
Awesome. So if you are interested in becoming a data visualization consultant, focus on accuracy, aesthetics, storytelling, decision-making, and the last one was...
and knowing your audience.
Audience. Got it. Thank you. Okay, now I got it. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time on here today. I really appreciate it. And hopefully our audience now has a better idea of how you can equip business users with self-service analytics and how you can get into data visualization as a consultant.
Thank you very much. I was glad to be here.
Thanks. And thank you guys.